Hello.
Hi, Ezzy.
How are you, Sandy?
Oh, much better than it was. I'm good.
I'm glad. And you're feeling better as well?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, I can still, I'm tired. I slept through the morning to recover some stamina, and I still feel a little bit like I've got an odd voice, but other than that, I'm good.
Okay. Is my shirt coming out all weird right now? Because on the screen it looks like there's
Yeah,
all these weird.
you have the old TV effect or the when you try to take a
Right.
picture of the screen. Yeah, it's doing that.
So I hope I don't have anyone go into seizures while I'm doing this. I'm looking at this. I look like this weird, like I look like a glitch. Okay. Um, uh, Maybe I was never really even here. You're gonna find yourself in 5 years. Has he never existed? What were these Noahide classes? I don't even know. Um, okay. I know Jonathan and Antonio are not going to make it this week. I think we're going to switch to 8:30 next week. Even though I think we're changing the clock soon, so I'll see what that looks like once we change the clocks on our end. But
Yeah.
if need be, we'll see about making it a little earlier. I know they could watch the recording, but obviously it's enjoyable to do it when we're doing it together as a community.
Yeah.
More specifically, also, that's also what's very much needed in the Noahide movement is community, right? So I want to make sure that there's a conversation happening, basically. Okay.
And in that sense, like I've connected again, like online places here in Canada, I've mentioned, but it's still online. So,
Right.
but I am trying to, look into what does that look like.
Well,
But
I
the
think
majority of my interaction is still just with people in sort of the network that we're connected with. So
that's understood. It also happens to be that, and maybe I should do this. I was going to do it like when we were done, but I don't stream any of our sessions on, let's say, the Noahide channel, like the official Noahide channel. There's no specific reason why I'm not doing that. I just haven't been doing it. So I could also stream it over there. That could potentially also allow for more cross-pollination of like people having that discussion.
I did friend, what's his name from BC in Facebook because they stream theirs through Facebook.
I don't even know how I would do that.
I don't know, but would you like me to ask him if they would find
sure,
that
you
helpful?
could ask.
Or if, because they've just started, the last one that I listened to that they were running was the history of the rabbis, which I'm still very lost on, which is kind of where we started. So I don't know, but I can run it by him. Yeah, absolutely. Dan.
Yeah. So I think I know Dan. I know of Dan. I've commented a few times on their channel, but just telling them like, way to go, good job. But maybe I'll post this as well. Generally speaking, though, I think that things that you guys could do together online is there could be like a prayer service together. There could be a learning group together that you guys yourselves like decide. I mean, I don't mind, of course, being involved, but you could also decide on hours that make more sense for you to take on other hours, take on other stuff. So those are things that we could, of course, do together. And obviously, feel free to invite if you.
Of course, I love doing things here. Yeah, and if that's okay, do you sort of maybe put out some? Yeah, okay, good idea.
I mean, what does that mean? Again, I don't proselytize, right? So like, this is just, if you want to, I'm willing to teach. So like, you're never going to hear me offering this to people.
No, I would run it by the Facebook group because I've joined several. I joined the Jews for Judaism one because there was something interesting that I wanted to listen to live and have opportunity to ask questions if possible. They're in Toronto, so that Rabbi Skowak was teaching some things, and I think he is also somewhat connected through the Noahide Canada. Yeah, and so there are people, and they were also using people for rabbis for teaching that I think for the Noahide Society they were. I just kind of thought they maybe were using people in Israel as well. So maybe I'll run another email by him and ask some questions.
Anyone, I haven't looked at this in a while, but one second.
Yeah. Because when I first was looking online for things, that was one of the things that I wanted to know was whether, because I saw there was two parallel groups running things out of Israel, kind of doing their own thing. And I wanted to know if they were affiliated with the one that you're affiliated with, because we'd already started this. It would sort of make sense to connect myself.
So there's a few. So there's Ask Noah, right? I don't know how many subscribers they have, but that has a few rabbis that are also working with the Noahide group. There's Brit, obviously. There's the Noahide Academy. There is Nativ.
Don't know that one.
There is ICE.
Okay.
So let's say Rabbi Tuvia Singer works with Brit Olam. It also works with Nativ. He also works with ICE. He also works with Sukkot Shalom. So there's Sukkot Shalom, which are Bnei Noach. There is Bnei Noach Academy. Now I've mapped them out in the past because Rabbi Shirky would like, again, he understands that there's different flavors. He would like that it all happens under the umbrella in Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
While still allowing people to do their thing. So
right. And I've been following some of my singers' things, also trying to figure out a map. And because it's similar to it's like the premiere thing that Sam did recently, that people from the this little corner were watching, where you can have a live chat but a recorded video stream. And so when I realized that you could have a live chat, even though some of the things that were being posted on Tanakh Talk were not necessarily live in times I could watch them, the very fact that you could still have some interaction in the chat, I found useful. And so I know there's a couple of people who go in that chat. One guy from Toronto and a lady from Ottawa, which is 6 hours away, but Toronto's an hour. So I thought, okay, so there's possibilities of actually finding people in a bit of a geographical, circle around me. So,
and I think that it's possible, even likely potentially, that it won't necessarily happen for you right now. But I do think that as it grows, like, you will have, it could be someone in your neck of the woods will decide to be like, you know what, I need to move towards this area where there's more Noahides, where I can. So you are a pioneer in the sense, and all you guys are pioneers in this sense. And this is what it looks like being on the ground level or something, of course. So again, I salute you guys, because I know how difficult it is.
And for me, it's just asked, like, with how much I've talked in Jacob's stream and other places about my son, Jacob. That's the one that's in the group home. It's kind of like, this is just what you do. Like, you get handed a baby I got handed a baby with two things I knew nothing about. So what do? You ask questions, that's the first thing I did. I got on the phone, called every family and friend I knew and said, does anybody know about, or know anybody that knows about? And so I'm kind of following that same plan of approach.
I think that's great. And even more than that, ultimately, at the end of the day, very much like spreading your wings. If you found, because I'm sure there is someone that is, you feel like the vibe is better over there, then, by all means, listen to his classes, go to him. If at the least,
sorry, Dan, not at the moment.
Again, no pressure, but I'm here as we say, as the chimney cleaners. We're just here to clean and offer proper communication and ventilation towards God. You can find that in other places, and that's fine.
And that's the sort of thing too that I would want to ask, and you can check and talk to Rabbi Turkey. It's like, so I have an established community of friendship here that's unrelated to, like, it started before we started doing this. So it's not like I want to say, if you move to another area, you don't drop your friends where you used to live, sort of thing. So I don't see it as competition in any way. I'm just building some friendships in a couple of places. So
100%. And it's also you could cross-reference the data, right? Realize that Chazi's been selling us lies this whole time, setting us down. All he's offering is idolatry.
Hey Dan, I need some critiques.
Exactly. As he said, there's this verse, but it sounds all right. Let's get into it. I think we will see if we're successful. We'll try to go through 12 and 13. Okay, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Wow, I feel like we're stepping right into the middle of a thought. Of every bird according to its species, and every animal according to its species, and every creeping thing upon the ground according to its species. And my covenant shall be upon your flesh as an everlasting covenant. And they shall keep the way of the Lord to practice charity and justice.
Right.
Aside from this, do you want me to read the little bit under that?
Yeah, you can read that. Sure.
Aside from the 7 principal laws, Noahides were commanded to observe other laws as well.
Right. So the chapter is chapter 12, additional laws, right? We went through the main laws, and now we're at the back end right now. So first of all, we're being told over here at the bottom over here that aside from the 7 laws, right, there's other commandments as well that they were asked to observe. As we discussed, also many things derive from the 7, right? Like we have 613 that derive from the 10 commandments, so to speak. We also have many that could be derived from the 7. Now, the intro over here, which also relates to item number 1 with regard to the hybrids over here, is talking about how there's diversity. However, it in theory it requires to stay distinct. During the time of the flood, things were really going crazy as far as the Midrash tells us, between animals and humans, between humans and humans. So there's a sense where people lost their balance and their order, so much so that the world itself lost balance and lost order, so to speak. And that's why God had to come and do control, delete, and start with a new version. Now, the second line over here is just a reminder for us that, and my covenant shall be upon your flesh as an everlasting covenant, right? Both to Noah and Abraham, there are everlasting covenants that God made. And again, this is just a side note. I don't understand why more Christians or more Jews, to be honest, are not aware of this this letter that came out from 2015 from the Vatican, or like a subgroup in the Vatican that talks about how Jews, we should stop with proselytizing and trying to convert Jews, and how it remains a mystery what their relationship is with God. Nevertheless, God doesn't, if God made an everlasting promise, he's not going to change his mind. And Jews do not require salvation through the church or Jesus. They could find salvation through the Torah, which to me is mind-boggling that people don't stress that even more, realizing, because I believe that even more purifies our relationship with our Christian brothers. The fact that or as far as the Pope and the Vatican goes, as far as all those Christians in theory are being told right now that there isn't that tension anymore.
I'd say they didn't read the letter, but I think in Catholic circles, they're pretty serious about relaying things like that.
I'll put it on the group. I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I sent it to someone else that was talking. He was shocked by this. I was like, no, this is legit.
I haven't heard that. So interesting.
No problem. I'll send that out. And so it's everlasting. And lastly, and they shall keep the way of the Lord and to practice charity and justice. So this is why Abraham is chosen, right? This is in context of why, right? We have Enoch. It doesn't work out. We have Noah. It doesn't work out. And then God finally finds someone that is walking before him, is not waiting for the invitation by God. And God also sees his attributes and says, okay, this is why I'm choosing him, because he is going to, right? And he's going to teach his kids, his descendants, and they shall keep the way of the Lord and practice charity and justice. That's what he wanted to see. He wanted to see someone managing to embody that, understand that, intuit that's the order of the world without being told necessarily, you need to do X, you need to do Y, right? Abraham was not given any commandments. He understood that this is the way to act.
I do have a question you might want to hold for if it doesn't come up in here, feel free to hold it for rabbis. And earlier, Jacob did a live chat earlier, just talking about things, and
the Trinity. Who's who? I'm just throwing what Jacob talked about. Okay,
Jacob's greatest hits, but also Andrew brought something up from 3. I'm not good with my. Anyway, they were comparing. There's 3 things in one of the faiths, Christian faiths.
The cardinal sins?
Those guys, yes. And thank you. I depend on my Jewish friends to remind me of the names of things that I should have learned in church.
Well, Judaism has 3 cardinal sins, and we spoke about how Noahides have between 1 and 2.
Okay, yes. And so one of them, they were talking about different kinds of theft or stealing, and that wasn't necessarily the word. And of course, one of the others being murder. And I was thinking to myself at that point in the day, is there a relationship in why theft would make the list? Because in a sense, like what came up in the discussion was Jacob explaining about not stealing, theft that could like take somebody's life. You don't do something that could harm them to that degree. Like don't steal something from them that will cost them their life, sort of deal. And when I opened this and saw this, it reminded me, I was thinking about, there's so many interesting things in the extended laws, the way things go into like not eating the limb of a
live animal,
like all of the different things. And I thought, does this even come down to things like this where in terms of taking the life of, like, it is in a sense when you create a new variety of something and you prune off whatever, and they slice the tree and they insert it into the tree, and then they create, like, I've had roses like that where they actually revert back to what the root is. They stop being the hybrid and they go back to the root. Is that also a form of theft of life, therefore not maybe as labeled as murder, but it's still stealing a life?
Interesting. So first, I'll just say out of the 3 cardinal sins in Judaism, theft is not one of them. It's idol worship, murder, and
that's
inappropriate sexual behavior. Right. Can like stealing from someone his last ration of food, right, would really be sentencing him to death, which would then bring you into the realm of the cardinal sin. With regards to is splicing and hybrids, is that sort of you are denying the true potential of what was there, and therefore you are killing. So I don't know if I would see it that way. I do think though that you are denying true potential. However, right, you'd have to ask, okay, what about IVF, right? I'm not denying true potential, but I'm clearly getting involved with, I'm creating new potential. So obviously there's different a rabbi's not going to tell you yes to that unless he knows that like all natural courses have run their course, so to speak, and then that's only something that you would do later on.
Right. And I mean, I know there's like heart transplants and things that happen, and we didn't have that available, 100 years ago. And, some of the surgeries that my son had to undergo, they're messing with the body in a sense, but they're messing with the body in a way that maintains life.
Right. So we've mentioned this in the previous classes, how one should see, if possible, donate his body parts if he can, right? And we see many rabbis see that as a very big mitzvah. However, there are some in the ultra-Orthodox community that like, hell no touching the body, not doing anything like that. So these, of course, are tensions that we have. But of course, using it to save another life, using your body parts to save another life is a huge deal. The question with regards to splicing engineered meat, as biotechnology advances, rabbis, of course, will have to start dealing with these issues and these new conundrums, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
We also
to throw us off track or anything. I just
no.
was curious.
As long as it's Torah, it's all good. Okay, let's wait. No, that's not what I wanted to do. Do you still see me? I think I just.
Oh yeah.
Do you still see?
see
Oh, good. It's moving. Okay, good. Let's go through. Okay. It is forbidden to hybridize fruit trees and animals of different species. However, there's no punishment for doing so, and the fruit of offspring are permitted to eat or to use. Right. So once it's done, so to speak. We're saying don't play around with this. Don't be God. Now you've made a mule. Okay. Can I use it? The answer is yes. You could use it. Generally speaking, we want to maintain God's order. That doesn't mean that like, oh, if my son's blind, then I'm not going to do anything about it. No, of course you could deal with that. You could work with that. We also know if people used to think that someone deaf, halachically speaking, is now exempt from commandments because we thought that he doesn't understand what's going on. In reality, now we understand, no, he does understand what's going on. And there's a whole other language over there that they could be tapping into. And of course, that's why we need to be very sensitive to that. And of course, if as modern medicine advances, we'll have to see how that works. But generally speaking, Jews and Noahides should try to refrain from doing such things. But again, if it's done, it's done. The definition of what distinguishes one species from another is determined by what is agreed upon by the sages who are experts in such subjects. So notice over here, it's sages who are experts in this subject, right? It's not just Joe Schmo, the sage. Like he might be a great, like Rabbi Skobik could be a fantastic rabbi, but if he's not aware of those differences, he would not be an expert on that. And there are rabbis that are experts on specific things. Now, so that's why it's important. We should consult the experts, of course. Any rabbi should, even if he believes that the Torah is, infinite and all the wisdom is there, and there's something to that, nevertheless, speak to your local veterinarian or botanist when dealing with these things. Number 3, circumcision. A Noahide male may be circumcised for the sake of fulfilling the commandment of circumcision. And there are those who say that it is an obligation for those of the Arab nation, as they should be circumcised on the 8th day of life. If the father of a child, or if the father of the child is a Jew and the mother is not, sages should be consulted. Okay, so here too, he may, it's not a must. However, unlike other things, which is not an obligation, here there is a biblical obligation to do so as well. So you don't have to doing that, but by doing so, you are, in this case, completing an obligation that you have. So it's sort of this hybrid as well, which you don't have to do, but it's recommended to do. It's also important to remember that this decree was given to us before the Torah was given about circumcision. So that's why there is this obligation, because it even precedes the Torah itself, or let's say the 10 Commandments themselves. This will get into, there's a ramification to this, of course, or this sheds a little light also on Maimonides' understanding about the obligations one has to take on. As far as asking your rabbi or your Noahide sage with regards to a mixed couple, the reason is because, as we know and we mentioned many times, Noahides are accepting and taking on their commandments, right? However, they need to make sure that there's no confusion with regards to, are they Noahide or Jews? So you could imagine that if there is a father that's a Jew and a mom that's not Jewish, and they circumcise the kid very quickly, and they live a Noahide life or some sort of religious life, it could be very confusing, right? The kid could be thinking he's still Jewish, even though in theory he's not, because of his mother. He grows up not knowing this. He is now in a Jewish community. He falls in love with Sarah, and now we have a problem. So that's why it's not that it's not possible. It's just one needs to be very careful where that's happening, how it's being done. Are people aware of this as well?
Mm-hmm. Is there noise from I have had the door open just because of air.
I don't hear any noise.
Okay. Except for the phone.
Charity. There are those among the sages of Israel who included giving charity among the Noahide laws. Therefore, it is most appropriate to uphold this commandment. we should also differentiate and notice that charity, charity in Hebrew is called tzedakah. Okay, tzedakah, which also why the Arabs call it zedakah, because it comes from our tzedakah.
I wondered that. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if all the Arabs are aware of that, but that is where it comes from. So does the amount of times they pray a day, and so do many other things. It's all good. We're here to share. So tzedakah comes from tzedek. Tzedek means justice, and this goes back to what we said earlier, why God selected Abraham, because he saw that his kids, the descendants of Abraham will continue in the ways of justice. One of those ways of justice and being a good person is giving tzedakah. The difference over here is, am I giving charity because it's nice to give charity, or am I giving charity because I realize I am creating justice in the world? Right. So of course my intentions matter, specifically if I want my intentions to be oriented and elevated properly towards God. Do I think that just giving charity because it's a nice thing to do, is God not happy with that? No, I'm sure God is happy with that as well. But the intentionality of realizing that you are basically restoring balance to the force, so to speak, is also the kind of intention that we want to have while we're doing these things. The Rambam wrote that there are 8 levels of charity, each greater than the next. Okay, so we'll go through this. I'll read through all of them, and then we'll take a bird's view. The greatest level is to support one's fellow who extends his hand asking for help, to give him a gift, a loan, form a partnership with him, or find work for him until he is able enough not to need to ask from others, right? So we'll do the commentary now, where this is very much teach someone how to fish, right? Instead of giving someone fish. There's more about because he could now eat for the rest of his life. Ideally, you want to fully engage with the person, because that is the best way of it's not I just gave him charity, or I just gave him charity because I know it's justice. It's I fully was there with the whole interaction from getting him to the street and bringing him back up. This is in a certain sense similar or echoes some of the reasoning in the slaves that we talk about, in the concept of a slave that we talk about in the Bible. People come out, up in arms about this. How do you have slavery? People have to realize the slavery that the Torah is talking about is Joe Schmo now stole from the Cohen's house. Instead of beating him, instead of sending him now to jail for the rest of his life, comes the judge and says, the Cohen family, you were wronged by this robber in here. He is now going to work for you in your house, and he's going to learn and see what it's like to have a functional family and house. And this comes together with, of course, because he's coming to work for you now. If there's only one bed, he gets to sleep in it. If there's not enough food, he gets the food. The punishment is rehabilitation, right? So now, again, we use the word slave. I think the world would be in a much better place if that's how we were treating our transgressors in the world. So here too, even with the poor person, you really fully need to get involved, right? Bring him into the house, help him out. Now we, of course, understand I can't be bringing on tweakers from the middle of the street that are just going to start stabbing me. So we have to, of course, take these things into consideration. But this is the highest level the Rambam's talking about. One level lower than this is one who gives charity to the poor and does not know to whom he gives. And the poor person does not know from who he receives, right? So here it's the fact that I don't need any fame. I'm giving. I don't need to know who it's for. I just know someone needs to get it. And the person doesn't need to know who I am. It's all good. Close to this level is one who gives charity to a fund. But one should not contribute to the charity fund unless one is certain that the one who supervises it is trustworthy, wise, and behaves competently. So a live example of this was after October 7th, many of my clients reached out and said, what can we do? What can we do? But they also said, please only send us to areas that, that we know we could trust. Now, their attitude was, we trust you, Chezi, so we know that you're going to do the due diligence for us. But the idea is God says, yes, it's nice that you gave charity. But if you are just every day automatically saying like, yes, I approve this $5 charity and not realizing that it's going to nowhere or not being used as charity, right, then you're really not doing your job. You should have intentionality, right? We said like, okay, you're not bringing him into the house. Now you're just giving it to a fund. Do your due diligence. See who the fund is. You have to know what's happening over here. Is that understood?
It is.
Okay. One level lower is one who gives charity, and the giver knows to whom he gives, but the poor person does not know from where he takes. Such was the custom of the great sages of Israel, who secretly left money in the doorways of the poor. This is a viable alternative when those managing the charity funds do not behave competently, right? So you're saying, I can't trust these funds. I'm just going to give it directly to X, but I don't need X to know who I am, right? So I'm just going to leave it about there. But that's in theory like a lower level, because built into there is some of the fact that you are aware of who you're giving, and there's like an ego element there potentially. One level lower is when a poor person knows from who he takes, but the giver does not know who he gives. Such was the way of the sages who would tie bundles of coins to the back of their cloaks so the poor could come up from behind and take them without embarrassment.
Oh.
One level lower is to give someone in need before he even asks. One level lower is to give him after he asked. One level lower is to give him less than one should, but cheerfully. One level lower is to give him with a sad. What does it say over there?
Give to him with a sad countenance.
Give to him with a lot. Okay, correct. Give with him with a sad countenance. The most esteemed sages used to give a penny to the poor before praying, and only after doing so would they pray, as it is said, then I, being justified, will behold your face. So their attitude also symbolically was, before I can even start talking to God, I need to embody justice. And the way I'm going to embody justice is I'm going to be giving it to the other person. We have a Yosef over here, which is nice. I remember learning about the Catholics from Rabbi Sachs, buried at the end of an hour drusher. Quite an amazing ruling. Sorry, I'm 15 minutes late. Okay, you didn't miss so much, Yosef. Glad to have you over here. So anyways, there's all these levels that the Rambam talks about. It's beautiful to see how we see this breakdown of levels, and we should all do our best to climb the ladder, so to speak, but definitely position ourselves where it makes sense. And of course, today it's very easy to give to organizations, which immediately brings you up to like one of the higher levels, but you should do so with due diligence.
Well, and one of the things that jumps out at me from that immediately is the reminder of justice, it being about rebalancing the world, making sure that justice is, because I think in a lot of ways in general society, it's not emphasized. So we forget, we think, oh, you're just being nice to some poor person who's had,
correct,
and that it's so much more full in the way you've described its application and why.
Like I said, even with the slave, it's a community. No one should be left behind, so to speak. So even the poor person and that's also why the poor person himself has to give charity, right? Because God wants to make sure that this is a built-in system of wanting to the justice of chasing after this, so to speak, right? We want to make sure that this is something that's very present in our life. Okay, number 6. Why don't you take number 6? Well, I'll read number 6. I think we've done this before. Actually, Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed because they did not give charity. So we spoke about this in the past, how in Sodom, first of all, they were very nervous about the Canaanite people because they're aware of how needy they were for rain. And that's why if they didn't have rain or they were attacked by other tribes, they might end up coming to Sodom and asking for stuff, right? So their attitude was already, this is a problematic place. We're nervous giving to them. When they would come, they were very, very specific on, their measurements. We know about, like, if you were too tall, if you were too short, how they would accept people into their community. They would never give people food, right? If someone hungry came, they wouldn't give him food. They would just give him money. And the attitude was, just give him money, but he can't use the money basically in Sodom. So he would just go around collecting money, and eventually he would perish because he didn't have any food. And the people in Sodom would mark their coins. So after the guy would perish, they could all go back and claim back what they gave, right? This was mine. So something that we should, so it's emphasizing how Sodom was very, very problematic. obviously we know what happens to Sodom at the end of the day, but this is used as a juxtaposition compared to like what we're supposed to be doing, right? If it's Sodom, they were very against this. We are very much for this. We want this integrated fully inside our religion. And we just had yesterday concluded the festival of Purim. And in the festival of Purim, aside from getting dressed and getting a little drunk, this is because we also have matanot le'evyonim and mishloach manot. Mishloach manot is all the people of Israel, so to speak, they exchange gifts, food between each other. There's also matanot le'evyonim, which are gifts for the needy and the poor. So two of these things happen on Purim. It's something very, very beautiful to see happen, of course. I realized I just said, and we drink a little to get drunk. Just to clarify, we're not just drinking to get drunk. There's a element, which is you want to drink where you confuse between cursed is Haman and blessed is Mordechai. And the reason is to create this space also where, like, everything becomes topsy-turvy. You could realize the miracles that happen in your life. There's a deep Torah over there, but it's not just like going on a bender and just drinking nonstop. It's actually very elevated and beautiful, utilizing elements like alcohol in the proper orientation. Number 7. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking the word charity. I heard somebody comment that they had heard this explanation of Sodom and Gomorrah once, but they didn't really reference it beyond that. And they were saying, what a stupid thing to think, because what they were focusing on were the other elements of the story. But but I never heard anything there again. I never heard anything about balancing justice or looking at how and why and how people behave as that place of putting God in a spot where you're aware that he's left us commandments that help us to keep light in the world, and not just like the whole thing becomes about keeping things in right order. And I never heard the story about the coins with it. It wasn't taught from a Jewish perspective.
Well, all of this alludes back to, God looked at the Torah and created the world, right? That this is very much the blueprint of how we are supposed to be behaving, right? So manifesting in such or participating in such a way, in theory, should be creating a divine sequence, which also makes sense in the world, right? Which is there is a sage that talks about how he's borrowing from the philosophical concepts of form and function, but talking about how when the Israelites go in front of the Sea of Reeds, it splits, not because it's miraculous, but just because there's a hierarchy between form and function, and it was always made to open up once the Israelites would be in front of it, like as in it's exactly what was supposed to happen, assuming you believe in that divine sequence. So it wasn't necessarily miraculous. It's just like the Israelites are exactly where they're supposed to be in the exact right time, and then the water will behave accordingly. It won't do that on a Tuesday, and it won't do that if it's not Israelites. It will do so when it makes sense, not because it's miraculous, more because that is the natural sequences of things if done in the proper order. Of course, it was much easier for us to see this proper orientation when we had God, or at the very least when we had the pillar of smoke and we have the pillar of fire walking with us, orienting us, protecting us. But unfortunately, we are very far away from that, and all we still hear are those echoes.
I don't mind the echoes. I actually really get behind that. I can, even in my life, see ways in which small examples of that. Things with my son, I heard this. Who was it? One of the rabbis I was listening to online was talking about when he had gone down to Brazil, I think it was, and then he'd gone to Mexico or somewhere else. And he was, in both instances, sharing stories of, he's super tired. He arrives and he's said, hey, we've got this person for you to talk to. In the second story, it was a woman whose son had died. I think he was 20. And I won't go through it's a good story, but I'll just say what was interesting was the rabbi was comparing his attitude and his things he was grumbling about to God in both the instances, and in each of the things, the outcome of also what he was there for the person that he was to speak to was for them, but also spoke back to him in relation to how he had been feeling about, the interruption in his plan of this is how it always happens.
Right.
And with the second one, the question that he asked of the mother, who, it was a very sad story, but he asked her if God had come to you and said, I have this child, this soul that is only going to come to earth for 20 years. And I need somebody who's willing to have this child and to look after him for that time frame. What would you say? And she immediately said, absolutely not, which had been, like his take. And then when she realized what she had said, as a mother listening to it, I was like, yeah, I get that. There's the whole, you cannot really deny your child, no matter what else. Your relationship, for me, it was the whole, so here is a child with deafness, autism, a whack of surgeries. This is not the child you were anticipating. And I had that conversation before he was I had that conversation before he was born. So when you say, here is the sea of reeds, and it is made, and it is just waiting for the moment that God has given it to open up before the people of Israel, because that's what it was designed to do. I know the places I had some difficult conversations with God around my initial reaction, which was more like the mom's than, sounding super holy. It was like, I don't want to do this, but when push comes to shove and you realize this is a blessing God has given you, and this is what you were designed for and called to do, it changes the entire picture.
Intentionality, definitely. It also changes like your whole frame of reference. But people, like, for that to happen, right, one has to be oriented properly. One has to put themselves in the right position. One has to, quote unquote, open their eyes, right, and see what's in front of them.
I think difficult. That's why I love the story, the way the rabbi told it, because it really, it showed those places. It showed that. It really did, and it was good to listen to in the timing when I heard it. And it was very.
Thank you for sharing that. Nice
to know that there's people in the world who have stories that kind of don't necessarily show their best places, but also they're willing to share them because they're important to share. Yeah.
Do you mind reading 7 and 8?
Sure. Laws of donating and tithing to the Kohanim priests apply to Jews in the land of Israel and are not demanded of Noahides. Nevertheless, it is a great virtue for a person to separate a portion of his income for charity, acts of loving kindness, or any other activity that strengthens and spreads the knowledge of God.
Right? If you're doing that for that purpose, as you see broken down over here, not because it's good to give charity. And it could be that if you dug a little deeper, somebody like, well, I guess it's good. Why is it good? Besides from just like, well, that guy doesn't have it. It's good because it spreads the knowledge of God. And what does that mean? The guy sees I'm giving. Why are you giving me? Because I see you as another person that's made in God's image. And I want the best for you. It's not because I'm giving it to you because you're knocking on my door and I just want you to get away from me. I'm giving it to you because you asking this from me and me giving it to you actually completes me. It makes me more. It makes you more. It makes us together more.
Right.
Moving on to proper conduct.
The prohibition against sowing seeds of different species together in the land of Israel, deriving benefit from sowing a mixture of seeds in a vineyard, the commandment to leave the corners of field unharvested for the poor, allowing the poor to glean from harvested fields, leaving for the poor produce that was dropped and forgotten while harvesting, leaving for the poor grapes dropped while picking, leaving odd-shaped grape clusters for the poor. Even though all of the above laws are not obligatory for Noahides, it is desirable to practice them.
Right. So these are a bunch of laws that we are commanded in Judaism, and you could see over here how the attitude is you want even in your process, right, of bringing stuff in from the field, you're always thinking about the needy. You're thinking about the poor as well, and you need to do so in a way that maintains their self-dignity and self-respect, right? If you're there saying, hey, I left you that corner, Joey, that's not what we want. We want Joey to be able to walk in and know that he doesn't have to worry about people looking at him, people thinking about him. He's going to take what he needs. And you see even other grapes. We live in a culture today that, like, this grape looks a little funny. We get rid of it. We throw it out. You can see how this could be looking. Maybe it's not for the shelf, but of course, all creatures of God's world could still benefit from this and enjoy this and eat from this. In Ethics of Our Father, it goes even further and says how when practicing these commandments, one should also not do so as don't select your 4 beggars that you like and have them come all the time. And the reason I'll do that is because I know these 4 beggars, they're really more serious. They don't stink and they're not annoying. Like, that's not the point. That's at that point, you're systematizing charity. In reality, it should be anyone that wants to. Obviously, I'm not looking for someone to burn my field down, but anyone who wants to is welcome to come inside. So it's also important that it happens naturally while you are aware of it. Nevertheless, you sort of have to have anti-intentionality, so to speak. You don't want to be, yes, you know that you're leaving parts behind, but you're not thinking about I'm leaving this behind for a poor person. I'm leaving this behind because that's how I should look at my stuff. They're not all mine anyways. It's ultimately all God's. And even what is quote unquote mine is really to be shared with others. Okay, very nice. Number 9, whoever sees someone who needs his help, such as a person whose vehicle has stalled or whose belongings have fallen over, should make himself available to help. The Torah talks about walking and seeing that at the time, the transportation, whether your cattle, things like that, is buckling under the load, right? Both for the animal and for the owner, you want to come and assist. It's clearly too much weight on the animal. Second of all, I want to help you. Why? Because you're my brother, you're my friend, all those reasons that we discussed earlier. And in theory, this just looks like, be a nice person. It's a commandment, again, for the Noahides, a recommendation to have this mindset constantly, right? If you see someone on the side of the road, it's not like, oh, I'm a good dude because I stopped. That is what's supposed to happen right now. I'm supposed to stop because I'm seeing an incomplete part of myself. I see a person that needs help. I see someone, and even the animal. I see the animal itself is suffering right now. So I want to get involved. We should see ourselves ultimately as one big family. This is like the general idea. Someone who is owed money should not pursue the debtor, especially if he knows that the debtor does not have the money to pay him back. So we were talking about earlier about theft and if I'm taking from someone. So here's a perfect example that this is obviously very difficult. It's so difficult that even the great Hillel created at the time, a new concept called a pruzbul. But ultimately this was to allow debtors to still bring back their money, to get back their money. Otherwise, no one would loan any money. I'm going to loan someone money. He's going to tell me we got to the specific year in Judaism where now all these debts are forgiven, and I'm not getting anything back, right? So we wanted to make sure that system is still possible, and hence we built this quote unquote, I don't want to say loophole, but we built a mechanism that allows us to adjust it for society and the people around us. Having said though, again, in general, if one should be very sensitive to the person that took stuff from him. Why did he take stuff from me? Can he pay me back later? Maybe I could build some sort of plan which makes sense for him, right? I could decide to knock on his door and be like, you owe me money. And I can knock and be like, okay, hey, Eric, I understand you're not going to be able to pay me back this 10 grand right now. So let's just do milestones for the next X time where you pay me back. Or I don't know, let's barter. Let's do something where I could still assist you to return it to me. And yes, I also need that money, but I understand that pressuring you is not going to do anything, right? And hopefully we should always be on the side of the giver, right? And not on the side of the receiver, of course. 11, it is not proper to take as a pledge from a borrower any tool that the borrower needs for his livelihood or which he needs for cooking. He should not take the pledge by force and should return the pledge if the borrower needs it. A pledge should not be taken from a widow, right? So you have all these qualifications over here, right, where you need to ultimately, I'm going to take this guy's lawnmower right now, but that's his only way of actually getting me back my money. So that would be crazy to do. And this widow, obviously she's in need. And if I'm doing this right now, I'm just creating more pressure. So does society act this way? Unfortunately not. Is this the ideal of how we want someone looking at someone around them and really taking those things into consideration, right? A bank very much looks at people as figures. Do you have good credit? Is this a good investment or not? Creating justice is not doing those equations, right? It's saying, I need to give you money because I need to give you money. Now I'm in a different problem. You can't pay me back. It could even be, I'm not even going to be able to take that money back because you're a widow, or all the elements in front of me are blocked right now, which will bring me back to section number 10, right? Which is like, I'll have to be understanding. I'll have to build some sort of plan. I'll have to be patient. But again, this is something that it would be great for all of us to participate in. Number 12, letting land lie fallow in the sabbatical year and canceling debts in the sabbatical year, which we were talking about earlier, what Rabbi Hillel made, are not practiced by the Noahides. This also has to do with the fact that the land was given to the Israelites, and this is also something that's to do specifically with the land. So, while of course resident converts or Noahides could potentially live in the land, nevertheless, this specific commandment is not relevant to them. All right. How are you feeling about going through 13? Sure. Oh, wait. Okay. No problem. Taking on additional commandments. Okay. So let not the foreigner say, who has attached himself to the Lord? Why is this thing right now? I have something in my screen. I got it. The Lord will keep me apart from his people, right? So this beautiful, beautiful line by Isaiah where we're saying, how is it possible that God is going to, I'm also part of his people. I'm also his creation. I would say there are many Jews that are not aware of this verse, or not aware enough of this verse as well. And to be fair, Jews have not dealt with this or ruminated about this because we were on the run for thousands of years and very much taking care of ourselves internally, our communities, surviving. And there's still a lot of fear out there with regards to our universal status and our universal mission, so to speak, how that actually looks like. But that would look like verses like this, which clearly has to mean we have to realize that there's a relationship, of course, with Gentiles, Noahides, with God as well. There is a verse in Micha. I also want to read for a second. Let me open it up. And many nations shall go and shall say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may instruct us in his ways, and that we may walk in his path. For instruction shall come from Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Specifically, that verse, also the word of the Lord from Jerusalem, is also why Rabbi Shirky wants it to be all coming under the umbrella of Jerusalem, because ultimately that's where the word of the Lord comes from. And if we're talking about Noahides and this universal mission, maybe it's more appropriate to be coming from Jerusalem and not from, let's say, Sheboygan or someplace in Chicago. That doesn't mean we don't want those Noahide organizations to work. The question is, should we move ourselves from the framework of exile and start orienting towards, obviously, redemption, towards coming back to Jerusalem? But the reason I read that verse is because here you could see the Gentiles, the many nations, are coming to the mountain of the Lord, right? They're coming to the temple, and they're interested in learning from his ways and his paths. And notice that it's in plural because there are different pathways and there are different instructions based on who they are, right? It's not the same for every nation. It's not the same for every individual. Nevertheless, there is clearly a conversation going on with the Gentiles of the world as well, that God is very much interested in proper conversation with them.
I have a question. It's an odd question. As soon as I saw this, hey Ship, as soon as I saw this, the highlighted part at the top. What I wondered was, is it in a way related to what we just read through about charity and justice and how the balance of things has to flow, that you neither like, okay, try it a different way. Is it related to, you know, this, we've talked somewhere else about the two hands, that you push away with your weaker hand and you draw towards yourself with your stronger hand, you know, and I there's that same kind of principle in the giving and receiving of charity, in a way, how it feels. Is this related to that? Because it kind of, that's the first thing that came to mind when I read it. There's this something of, if I say, wow, and this goes back to this goes back to a long conversation with God, both in church and now, in terms of the how and the why of things. If I say to God, well, I want you, I'm going to attach myself to you, but you're good, you know, either you are going to keep me away from your people, or in doing so, I'm going to ask you to keep me away from your people. There's something that's like the whole Sodom and Gomorrah thing, isn't it? From my side, as a person who's attaching themselves, is that right to, should I not just be more like the giving of charity, or the leaving of the gleanings in the fields, that you don't even think about it? It's just so natural that what's going to happen is going to happen, and God's like,
ideally, I mean, like you're saying, it's so natural. That is, I spoke about this often, about how Judaism doesn't require like a mindfulness app, right? All the elements of Judaism are this intentional embodiment of the commandments, starting from what shoes I put on in the morning and the sequence of how I put on those shoes. So just like that should become second nature, plowing the land would mean, of course, it includes also, not all of this is mine, because all of it is God's ultimately. And because of that, of course, some of it also goes to the poor, because that's built into my system. That's not something I'm trying to eliminate. I'm not trying to get to a place where, and there's never more poor. I realize how the world functions and works. And that is, I need to participate with that. I'm not going to deny it. And I'm not going to have some utopian vision of like, now there's no more poor. If anything, it's more that saying that you yourself have to realize poor people are going to exist, and you should be more sensitive how you interact with them.
Right. And I think sometimes I hear or feel like there's this conversation of, I've heard a few places where, like, so if you're a Noahide, well, you're not Jewish. Not necessarily, I don't mean necessarily from Jews, but just in general out there. And I'm like, so if I decide in whatever means, whether I was like, if I have attached to God through being a Christian, I should at least try to be the best Christian that I can be, and hopefully not committing any sins while doing so. If I was Muslim, I should try to be the best Muslim that I can be. Same thing. If I was Jewish, I should be the best Jew that I can be, walking as God would have me walk and not committing any sins where I can avoid it, right? And if I'm a person who is not born Jewish and I am foreigner, and I say I am attached to the Lord, I should not also be saying the Lord will keep me apart from his people, because it shouldn't matter. I'm who I am. I'm who he made me to be. And that's what should matter. Just be who I am, where he made me to be, who he made me to be, the best that I can be in the time and the opportunities that he gave me. I'm back at the Reed Sea, like whatever's, I have to trust God that my life is organized in such a way that, does it matter if I'm not Jewish? No, I am going to be attached how he wants me to be attached, like that.
Put it in context. Let not the foreigner say, right, who attached himself to the Lord. Some guy that attached himself to the Lord, right, he decided to make that as attachment already, and he shouldn't say, I'm apart from his people. But the person that has attached himself to the Lord in this context is also one of those people that's making his way up to the temple, right? He's seeing clearly right now. And that person, once you realize that, of course, you're attached. Don't like, there would be a fear of like, you know what? Like, you're the first Noahide, so to speak. You're like, I realize this is the true path. I want to be invited. Ooh, but what if I'm not welcome? Of course you're welcome. But the conversation is being had for the person who attaches himself to the Lord. The one who doesn't attach himself to the Lord, what's the conversation I'm having with him?
Hopefully something that's just random, that God placed you, placed him before you to have a random conversation.
That I'm saying, of course, the Lord works in mysterious ways, as they say.
That.
Okay, number 1. We'll expand on this a little, I think. Yeah, I know how.
Kind of helping with my way my brain works.
All good. Noahide who probably took upon himself the 7 Noahide laws and wants to perform a certain commandment from among all the other Torah commandments in order to receive a benefit is allowed to perform it as described in Jewish law. So let's just read. Let's read. Wait, why is it? No. Yeah, let's read footnotes 410. Do you mind doing that for us?
410. Mishnah Torah Hilchat Melachim 10:10. There are those who hold that such a mitzvah should be done exactly as prescribed, and there are those who hold that ideally, a priori, it should be done in an irregular manner. This is not the place to expand on this matter, but the main opinion is the first one. See the opinion of Acharim.
The rest you don't have to go into. But basically what they're saying over here is, okay, there are some that say, as you recall, we really want to make sure that no one's getting confused, right? So do so a little differently so no one should think, oh, this is a Jew. However, we say the main opinion is, one is that you could participate in the exact same manner, more that you're also following the instructions in Jewish law, ultimately, right? So we have to remember that there's no obligation, but of course, this is an option to bring us closer to God. I will just take a second just to remind ourselves what we spoke about, like in the intro, which is, as far as Maimonides is considered, right? He sees Noahidism as a religion, right? He calls it Torat Bnei Noach, the Torah of the Noahides, ultimately. He also sees it, ultimately, he separates between a Noahide, someone that is keeping the 7 laws because he's doing so because it's nice, and that person cannot take on other laws because he's just doing so out of from an intellectual purpose, to someone that accepted the 7 Noahide laws as a Noahide. That person now could take on more things. Now, he also connects us back to the Torah. Sinai was universal, and that's why, yes, according to Maimonides and not according to others, keeping the 7, you must do so cognitively, intentionally, being aware that it comes from Moses, while others say you don't have to have that. But also Maimonides says because it comes from Moses and Sinai was universal. So that's why you could only do the mitzvahs that are connected through the Jews. However, you could keep more than the 7 once you're doing that. That's one understanding. There's also, we spoke about in the past how there's a difference between the collective and the individual, right? In Laws of Kings, he's talking about the collective. Many people want to become Noahides specifically, right? There's no other new religion that we're offering. If they want to do so, they need to do it tethered and connected back to Moses. That's the option for everyone. Then in a different law, he talks about the individual that wants to tether himself to God. And we spoke about this in last class. We read this beautiful verse from Maimonides, how he could reach, he could be considered holy of holies and could reach like the highest level. And we split that up according to like the Moses track and the Abraham track. The Abraham track is for the individual. Joe Schmo right now that, he wants to participate and do, if he lives on his little mountain, as long as you're sincere and you're real, then go ahead, do your thing. For the collective, we're not looking for whole groups creating new religions right now. So if all these people come right now, then yes, they should put themselves in a frame of reference of Noahidism through Moses. This is what we're keeping. However, so you are limited in a sense where like you're not starting your new religion, right? However, the conversation is you have many options to take on more commandments, so to speak, within those bounds, right? So it's restricting with regards to opening a new religion, but it offers a broad path for spiritual engagement with God, right? So, and again, we have to talk about, we have to notice the difference between the different opinions between someone accepting the Noahide laws or just doing so through Moses or not. So again, we could get into this. This is like a whole class within itself is a whole class. For right now, that was just like the general discussion, basically.
I'm mostly just thinking about Sinai being universal and the conversation that we've been having today and about charity, giving, receiving, rebalancing the world. So yeah, later.
That's a good context to have. Okay, number 2. Take it away.
And some authorities hold that the above applies even to observance of the Sabbath and festival and Torah study.
All right, so there's a big deal. Torah study we specifically dealt with last week. Again, there's a difference between someone who has accepted the 7 Noahide laws or someone that is just playing around with those ideas, right? Then there's even the ones that are, in theory, more restrictive on learning Torah. There's still a loophole there because anything that's related to what I'm studying as a Noahide is relevant. And then really, it's almost relevant to everything, right? Because you could be like, well, what does this mean? What does God mean? And then next thing you know, here's the reason why you're opening up all these books. So again, it really matters that you're doing so for the proper reason, of course. With regards to the Sabbath, which is quite a controversial take, ultimately, you want to, I would say, at the very least, it's a great day for family time, for Torah study, for bolstering and building your relationship with God. Does that mean you need to observe Shabbat exactly like a Jew? That's where it comes in, like ask your local rabbi, see the community you're in, how it's going to work in that context. So that is something that one has to take sort of seriously. And I would also recommend Noahides, before they take on such a commandment, start with like the low-hanging fruit. And at the very least, start with making it a special day. That doesn't mean it has to look exactly like ours, which do we get to it later on? I'm just interested to see. Yeah, he talks about it in number 4. Okay, so we'll get there. How about if you could read number 3?
A Noahide is to refrain from writing a Torah scroll, tefillin, or mezuzah, and from putting on tefillin.
Right, so these are the very few that, even according to Rabbi Shirky, who's clearly more open-minded, or more, I don't know about open-minded, more progressive, I guess, with his interpretations of what the Noahides could do. This is something they can't do. This also has to do with the fact that these parchments, I think, talk about the covenant God made with the Israelites. So this is, again, something that's like a lot more personal, a lot more specifically unique towards the Jew. Number 4, which relates to what we were talking about earlier, the commandment of Shabbat observance serves as a testimony to the world's creation. Therefore, it is fitting to honor this day and to sanctify it. The Shabbat is also a day of rest, in remembrance of Exodus from Egypt. Therefore, work is not to be done on this day. Unlike its definition, according to Jewish law, work for Noahides is anything that involves exertion. What qualifies as work is to be determined by the judges of each nation of their own people, for their own people. So what I read, or specifically what I think is highlighted here in the last part, which is ultimately, please God, everyone will have their own flavor. That's what we're being told to hear for the Noahides. You'll read about it, you'll learn about it, you'll see why the Jews are doing it, but ultimately you'll have to figure out for the Indian Jews, Indian Noahides, what their Sabbath looks like, and for the Albanian Noahides, what their Shabbat looks like. And each one is going to figure out what they can qualify as work, as exertion, what makes sense. So it could be that in Canada, this is a little different, but I still think it's a beautiful. There's a rabbi that, a great rabbi, may his memory be blessed, Rav Ovadia Yosef, a Sephardic rabbi that Jacob has mentioned in the past. And when he was living in Cairo, he realized that the community was not very observant. And however, he didn't want to say that, then they're no longer in my circle. We know about Shabbat. It has Zachor v'Shamor, remember and keep and observe. And he had this quite controversial take, which is he made sure that in the synagogue there would be a service early in the morning on Saturday, which involved the service prayer and like a small little get together, and then the people would go and work on the Sabbath. And he spoke about how while they're not maintaining the observance, they are maintaining their remembrance, and that within itself is very, very important. I think it would be great if even in Israel we could, I don't want to say lower the bar, but be more realistic and more open with what it means to be observant. Basically, does it mean that you have to keep all of the 613, or does it mean that you could still be considered observant within the realm of remembrance, of participation, so to speak? And obviously, that's for much greater rabbis than I to make such a decree. But regardless, it could be that, again, what we see as just remembrance, other world Noahides will see as observance, and like we have to realize the sensitivity and the differences there.
Reminds me of when people in the Christian context will have in their churches arguments about the letter of the law versus the intent of the law, and and somewhere, I guess it must be in the New Testament, about some people remember the Sabbath day. Some people treat all days equal, but whichever you do, you better be doing them in the right manner and attitude towards God. Because if you don't keep the Sabbath and you keep all days equal, well, you don't want to be keeping them equal in a lower, in a bad way. You'd rather be keeping them equal in a good way. And it's like, there's a lot of, and even the bit you read about like it being an expending of energy or something like that, I'm thinking, like just taking myself to work has had me sleep through the whole morning because my body has a lot of pain. And so to do what I want to do that's productive, I have to allow it rest that I don't really want to have to allow it. If I was younger, it would not be a thing, but sometimes you just need to honor the needs of the body and how it was made, and
there's a balance between rest and motion. We see this also in the days of creation, where like many of the days have a static day and have a day in motion. There's the ocean is just static, and then there's the ocean full of fish, and there's the land static, and there's the land full of animals. And in a certain sense, that's how also you could see the difference between the West and the East, right? The Eastern religions and the Western religions. And Judaism is supposed to be a blend, which is like you're acting like the West all week long, and on Shabbat you act like the East, where you rest. And doing those two things together is, let's say, the proper balance that you want to be having, so to speak. Please God, our brothers from the East will join us on this side. I also want to just mention as far as participating and keeping more things, that we also spoke about this in the first class, in the intro, I believe, about of Rav Yosef Albo's take with regards to the Noahide tradition and the Noahide Torah, which also he sees it's dynamic, and it also develops based on the character of the place and like who's practicing it. So it's the Gentiles' version of an oral Torah. And he also saw the other religions' versions of their oral Torah is, like we always say, the 70 facets of the Torah in Judaism, right? We say like there's all these different versions. So for Noahides, the difference between if there's a difference between a Sephardi Jew and an Ashkenazi Jew with regards to their quote unquote 70 facets, there would be a difference between a German Noahide and an Asian Noahide, and this would be their manifestation of their 70 facets of the Torah, so to speak. Let's move on with number 5.
The Pesach, I don't mind. The Pesach, Passover festival, which commemorates the Exodus from Egypt, especially the Seder on the first night, includes many commandments contained in the Passover Seder Haggadah book. It's cut off a bit.
Oh, I see. It's
yeah, but yes. A Noahide who participates in a Seder is to refrain from eating the afikomen, a piece of matzah consumed at the end of the meal.
Right. So you're invited. And again, you'll notice this, and people might focus on this. Like they might focus on like he can't have that and not notice that it says like you could participate, you could be in there, you could sit at the table, you could speak. So what you can't do is, again, the afikomen is the Pesach lamb was only eaten by the Jews. This is in remembrance of that sacrifice. And that's why it's sort of this unbroken tradition that we have since Sinai. And again, this is another element where it's like very specific, which is also like why in prayer, Noahides are not going to say like, as I was commanded, because you weren't commanded here too. This is something that's specific for the Jew going all the way back to that time. And again, it doesn't mean it's not universal. It doesn't mean that the Noahide can't sit at the table and the Noahide can even teach us all about it if he's very well versed about it. He just can't partake in it. Number six. Yes.
Festival days prescribed by the Torah and enhanced by the prophets and sages, and fast days as well, are designated in the Hebrew calendar.
Correct. Now, let me see. Footnote 42. Right. So some of these festivals would be Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh was the new moon, new month, Pesach, which we discussed Passover, Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day. Jacob's going to say absolutely not. Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day. Jacob's going to say absolutely not. Lag BaOmer is the day of remembrance of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. We light fires. Yom Shichru Yerushalayim, Jerusalem's Liberation Day. Jacob would say absolutely not. Again, these are, here and in religious Zionism, these are seen as, the fact that we, Israel Independence Day, if you see Israel in the sense of a religious context, of course, that would be a day for jubilation and celebration, right? Because it was miraculous, assuming you buy into that. Shavuot, we go up to the temple, Rosh Hashanah, the new year, Sukkot, Simchat Torah, the festival of appreciating the Torah as well. Hanukkah, Tu B'Shvat is the new month, celebrating the growth of the plants, renewal, rebirth, and Purim, which we just celebrated as well. With regards to the fast, do they mention them there? Okay, so for the fasts, the 17th of Tammuz, that marks the breach of the walls, the surrounding walls of Jerusalem before the second temple's destruction. So this starts 3 weeks. This is like the 3-week mourning period that led up to the 9th of Av. The 9th of Av, or where we say Tisha B'Av, that commemorates the destruction of the first and second temple. Okay, so they both happen on the same date, obviously years apart, but that happened on the 9th. Again, we have the 3 weeks before and the 17th with regards to the second temple. The 9th commemorates both the second and first temple being destroyed. The 3rd of Tishrei is called the Fast of Gedaliah. So this commemorates the assassination of Gedaliah ben Achikam. He was a Babylonian appointed governor of Judah at the time. And he then they get the Israelites get kicked into exile. Yom Kippur famously is the Day of Atonement, right, which is the holiest day of the year, the day of repentance. We're seeking, as Jews, we're seeking forgiveness from God. And Yom Kippur also is concluding the 10 days of repentance that begin with the new year, with Rosh Hashanah. And then over the next 10 days, we have these days where it's you increase in prayer and repentance and doing good deeds. There's the 10th of Tevet, which is another fast. That marks the beginning, the beginning of the siege of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar. And then we have the 13th of Adar, which relates to Purim, which we just had. This is the fast of Esther, the fantastic queen. And this is, of course, commemorating her fast that she did, the fast that she did and the Jews did in the land of Shushan before she goes and speaks to the king. There is just on that note, because we finished Rosh Hashanah, we finished Purim, there's a dramatic scene when Mordechai comes to Esther and says, you got to talk to the big man because this is not going to work out. And she says, it's not going to work, Mordechai. I could only come when called upon, and he hasn't called upon me. And he tells her, this is your moment. What he says, he's like, regardless, the Jewish people will be saved. It could be that you and your family, even me, will be wiped out. I'm not nervous for the Jews. They will be okay. But this is your moment. This is your moment to step into the books of history and make that change. Have God work through you. So this is something that we should always hear echoed to all of us. And it says, maybe for this reason you reach this position of power. Definitely people in power should think about this, but all the time we should be thinking about this. But generally, if we have that responsibility and we have that position, we should take that very, very seriously. Why am I here? How am I in this place? And recognizing who put me in this place and what do I need to do accordingly as well. So that was Esther, and that was just with regards to the fasts. I hope that was clear and I didn't rush through that too quickly. Number 7, if you don't mind reading that.
Festival commandments are as follows: hearing the shofar blown on Rosh Hashanah, fasting on Yom Kippur, waving of the 4 species, and sitting in the Sukkah and Sukkot, lighting Hanukkah candles, reading the Megillah, and having a festive meal on Purim, and others.
Right. So again, this is, you could pick and choose. You could see what makes sense with your community. So like, this is something that you could take into consideration. Now, it probably would be strange on a regular Monday for you and your family to show up in masks and costumes in school when no one else knows what you're talking about, right? So maybe don't start with Purim. However, there could be something like, I'm just throwing out an example, the Hanukkah lights, and the few Noahides get together and they light sign together and they sing a song and they talk about that. These are certain elements where we could all together participate in these things together. Section 8, someone who places a mezuzah. So this relates back to section 3, where we said one can't write a mezuzah. That doesn't mean he can't have or use a mezuzah, right? I can't write one. At the entrance of his house, should make an effort to make it recognizable as the house of a Noahide, which can be done, for example, by engraving the number 7 on the mezuzah case, right? So someone that has got to the level where that's what he wants right now, he wants to fully be living this Noahide / Jewish life, or let's say we'll call it fully Noahide, right? He wants to fully embrace himself in all 613. So here too, there needs to be some nuance, some difference. Again, we should notice the difference. So here too, we see a live example of how something like that would be done. Number 9. It is a commandment not to wear shatnez. That is a garment that is a mixture of wool and linen. So just to expand on this a little, because as we all know, or those who don't will find out right now, when we wear our tzitzit, our fringes, they are made out of wool and linen. Chazi, how can this be? Didn't we just say that's a problem? So first of all, you should realize, it's a real problem, which is like when I buy suits, I send it to a shatnez doctor. And the shatnez doctor checks and sees, is this a problem or not? And in many times, he could take out the threads that are a problem and change it around. Sometimes it could be too difficult, and you'll be like, I'm not going to get the suit because there's no way of me making it kosher. And playing with it would mean I'm really making a new suit. So now you're limited. However, one of the reasons, it's not very clear, and there's different opinions, but one of the reasons why this is forbidden, this goes back to the story of Cain and Abel, right? That the wool, in theory, is from sheep, and linen is from earth, right? One brought his earthly produce, one brought from his animals, and this mixture reminds us of Cain and Abel's conflict, and it signifies the separation of powers, so to speak, right? To prevent disputes. Now, the only person that could do this is the high priest, right? And this is someone that is devoting and serving to the Lord, so he could reconcile these opposite elements. And we see that we, as Jews, see ourselves as high priests when we wear our tzitzit. And that's why we could have this combination when we wear tzitzit of chesed, of grace, so to speak, and gvura together. And then you could have this. So like we said, like when, like the Rambam specifically talks about this, how, we have we don't have sacrifices or we don't participate in idol worship unless it's the high priest in the temple, right? So like we don't deal with anything blood, no eating blood, no drinking blood, but we have a lot of blood elements in the temple. No incense, no things like that, but we have incense in the temple. No sacrifices or building altars, but we have altars in the temple. So we are aware of these natural forces, but they need to be done properly oriented in the right context, in the right place. So tzitzit would be an example of like when done properly in that kind of garment with the right mindset, then you could try to reconcile these elements, which Judaism specifically, as it's light to the nations, is trying to do, reconcile all elements, ultimately speaking.
Is this related to all the discussion around God creating thing and the no thing? And therefore that would be why
the yesh and the en.
Why within the temple and before God with the high priest, there's some reconciliation of something.
That is a
sorry.
No, not a problem. That is like a very deep conversation. I would say there are elements that touch upon that, but it's much more it's much deeper than that and much more complicated than that, sort of to explain these concepts. So for now, I would say for another time.
Move the question out of
just in general, the yesh and the en. I don't think people should, dealing with Kabbalah, I would say first arm yourself with jargon and a toolkit in Judaism, and then I would say then sort of dive deeper into those mystical waters, just because they could seem confusing at times. And at the very least, the more full your stomach is with Jewish concepts or let's say basic Jewish concepts, it will be easy for you to tread in those deeper waters, so to speak. Number 10. The Torah delineated many types of ritual impurity applicable to Jews, but these do not apply to Noahides. However, it is good practice for men to immerse in a mikvah, Jewish ritual bath, after a seminal emission, and for women to do so in the conclusion of their monthly period, right? So here too, they do not apply for Noahides if there's things that potentially want to take on. Now, I just want to very shortly talk about this impurity, which is we want to create a balance of pure and impure, body and soul, a dynamic there. Now, a mikvah, the ritual bath, is generally, it's the way it works is you could always use rainwater, which would be like the ocean or just like, a massive lake, so to speak, because rainwater can't become impure. I would say the rabbis need to figure out how cloud seeding will affect that, right? If you're living in a place that only has cloud seeding, then is it actually natural anymore? But I leave that to the sages. Now, in a ritual bath that you have, let's say in neighborhoods over here, you have a pool of water that is being filled by hoses and general installation infrastructure. However, there's a connecting pipe that's connected to rainwater that connects to it, and that purifies all the rest of the pool water, so to speak. Generally speaking, if like during COVID, for example, many women couldn't leave the houses because of the lockdown, and then rabbis had to be more what's the word I'm looking for? More thinking outside the box, more
creative.
Thank you. More creative. And, using their toolkit to like, well, can you immerse yourself in a bath in this kind of case? So that's, again, for another discussion. However, it's not that a woman is bad or impure. It's the loss of potential life. Okay. It doesn't even mean that they have to have a baby. It just means, nevertheless, there was potential of life over there. And so we mourn for that. We are impure because of that, not because we're bad people. It's not the woman's fault. And that's the same reason why for a male also, if in his case, he too would go to mikvah because of this, because of the loss of the potential life that there was. So we always just want to be constantly purifying ourselves in that matter. It is a commandment to wash one's hands after awakening from sleep, in the morning, after relieving oneself, and before eating a meal with bread. right? So this would be an example of where Noahides, if they want to start slow, could take certain things on, like making brachot, right? Making blessings before they eat. As we mentioned in the past, like, the Buddhists rub their food before they eat it. Here, you are being invited to make a bracha. Regardless, it's showing mindfulness, being aware, taking a moment to stop and participate together with God in this, right? I'm aware of what you gave me. I'm thankful for this. Just with regards to washing your hands, also, when I'm sleeping, I might be touching my body, right? So you want to purify yourself. There's also a sense where symbolically I die and I come back every night, right? I enter a sense, a neurological sense of insanity, so to speak, when I'm dreaming. So I'm purifying myself when I wake up in the morning again. There are many Jews that, observant Jews, that next to their bed, they have a small little bucket of water with a hand glass, with a little cup. So the first thing they can do when they wake up is immediately clean their hands. Others just wake up and go directly to the bathroom. And with that, we conclude number 11. And I